How we doing, vetters? Welcome to Vetted. I have a very special episode for you today. John Greenewald Jr. from the Black Vault is joining me, and we're going to be discussing something to do with Lue Elizondo and ATIP. That story seems to never go away. And we're also going to take a look at James Lakatsky's emails that got erased, and John was able to uncover that, so we're just going to ask some more questions about that. And also, I saw something about an MH370 document I'm not too sure about. Maybe you saw it as well, so we'll get John to explain that as well. So if you're new to the channel, y'all, and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. I put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day. And please hit that like button, vetters. That really helps out the videos. So thank you all so much for the support there. And of course, comment down below. What do you think of John Greenewald Jr.'s comments on all of this, right? James Lakatsky's emails, Lue Elizondo, ATIP, everything here. Let's get it going. Let me bring John in and get this going. What's up, John? How we doing, brother?
I'm doing really good. It's good to be back, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, back round two. This is going to be awesome. I saw especially this saga. Can I call it a saga with Lue Elizondo and ATIP?
Saga. That's right. You were right. You nailed it. It doesn't go away.
It's like The Young and the Restless. It's been on for 48 years and counting.
Yeah, that's you follow.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, that is so true. I saw this whole thing with Lue Elizondo, ATIP, and everything, and I reached out to you and thought, okay, you know what? Let's get John to explain this a little bit better to us, and some other things that you've been hot on the trail for a lot of different stories, man. So yeah, I don't know what. Let's start with Lue Elizondo's thing here. I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Boom. I'll be professional vetted right now, Patrick, and we'll have screen shares and documents to look at. Holy cow, watch out. I'm learning. And you got this tweet. Let's break this down first. Lue Elizondo had you blocked on Twitter, right? Because we're blocked as well. Vetted is blocked as well. I don't know why.
Really?
What? Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, that kind of surprises me because I've never really heard you. Oh, interesting. You're not the only one on the list, to be honest with you, but I'm kind of surprised to hear you're on the list.
Me as well. So I can't see like his tweets or anything because I don't have secondary accounts and all this stuff that other people use. So if I'm blocked, I guess I'm blocked.
Yeah.
But we do have this right here, right? This is what he tweeted out, right? So I'm just going to read this tweet from him first. It says, I find it perplexing. And again, this is from Lue Elizondo. I find it perplexing that the Pentagon redacted the word ATIP from my email. 2 reasons to redact information legally. 1, it's classified. 2, is to protect an individual's privacy. Neither is the case. Disturbing trend by the Pentagon to continue its lies. I guess EO 12958 section 1.8 and ODNI classification guide section 2.2 don't apply to the Pentagon. These documents strictly forbid classifying information to avoid embarrassment. By this reasoning, I guess they will redact the name Arrow 2. Congress should be enraged, and so should the American people. Shameful and deceitful, period. I would expect this behavior from a third world's militia junta, but not that of a free society, unless we no longer are one. And then he links right here, right to your article, Black Vault. So, like, what is he talking about?
So I recently got a response from a request that I filed in 2021. So it took about 3 years to get 2 single pages. And what these pages were, I don't know if you have the FOIA release. I can try and pull it up on my side as well. But
here, let me see. Is this
if you go into that link, you'll see the documents.
This one, right?
I can't see on my screen
from it,
but it's what he linked. But
no, that's not it.
I mean, if you'd like, I can go ahead and pull it up for you. But the short of it is that there.
Here, I'll do it while you're explaining.
No problem. So there were 2 documents that came up from a 2021 Freedom of Information Act request. Specifically, I was going after an email that first appeared way back in 2020 in Popular Mechanics, but it appeared in a way that was very tough to figure out who it was to. It was very tough to figure out exactly what the context was, because it was like a picture of a skewed piece of paper with some random redactions that Popular Mechanics did, or the anonymous source for the email. I don't really know, but it's irrelevant. They published this redacted document. So the reason why it was published was essentially to give Luis Elizondo credibility, in the sense that it showed an internal document, allegedly at the time, an email that was passing essentially the responsibilities of ATIP to this other person. And so I was very intrigued by that, because obviously I've been heavily entrenched in this story since 2017, even in October when Luis Elizondo first stepped onto a stage. I thought it was an amazing story because it really solidified what I had been researching for decades. But as the months went on, obviously, I've been known as to be a little bit more skeptical against some of his claims, only because there have been a lot of red flags that have come up, not one or two, but really kind of a growing list of, we'll call them, again, red flags or questions that remain unanswered. Some over the years have become answered, and that's great. That's why we ask them. However, a lot still remain kind of in the air and open about what really was ATIP, what really was his role. And I know a lot of people cringe at those questions. It's like, well, Harry Reid signed this letter. Well, I mean, again, that's great, but he signed it as a private citizen. We don't really have any documentation whatsoever on this, what is termed as this unclassified program. So when this email surfaced, I thought, hey, this is really interesting. Despite my skepticism, I go where the evidence leads. I mean, I take my personal bias out. Not everybody believes me on that, but I really do. And I wanted to follow it. So I did some digging.
think this proves that, if I'm being honest.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I wanted to find this email when I saw it in 2020. But again, that heavily truncated version of it became impossible. But doing some digging, talking to some people, and just researching it took about a year plus. But I figured out who it was to, and figured out the date it was sent, or roughly an approximate date. And
is this it?
Filed the request. That would be, again, a little hard to see on my screen because on my side it's a little bit small.
Got it. It says two versions can be seen here.
Yes,
that's it, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll pull it up on my side so I can actually read it. But the email, essentially, when it was published in the Popular Mechanics, kind of had this part where it says, per SecDef's front office guidance to you and me. I took the liberty of drafting a memo at the unclassified level and then if you could read me the highlighted passage on that top screenshot.
It says, helps you better assume the new responsibilities for ATIP.
Yeah, because my version is redacted.
Redacted,
on my
right?
Screen,
yeah.
So that's why I couldn't read it. So thank you for that. So that was kind of the portion that was published in Popular Mechanics. So when I had filed in 2021, when I finally figured out some of the details of who it was to, because a truncated email, very hard to FOIA. You know, you're just like putting a shot in the dark. When you have a few details, you can actually, say it's to this person from Luis Elizondo. We know now it was Neil Tipton who it was written to. And we've actually seen the email before. For those who pay attention, it was published by the New York Post after they published in 2022 the Inspector General complaint. So I had it in 2021. That gave me enough to officially go after it. But I wanted to see what else was in the email thread. So to fast forward the story, then the general public saw it in 2022 with the New York Post. Now fast forward to this week, the government finally released it. Now, why did it take 3 years to review, and release 2 pages? The second page was entirely redacted. And when you read this email, it says that he, meaning Luis Elizondo, had drafted this memo at the unclassified level. Now, Popular Mechanics blacked out for whatever reason at the unclassified level as well. So we don't know why. I find that very strange.
That is weird.
But this memo is unclassified. So that's page number 2 in this FOIA release. The memo that Luis Elizondo wrote is completely and entirely redacted.
There's another part redacted here too at the bottom of this. It says Brennan, the name Brennan.
That's correct, yeah. So when they released it, that second page fully redacted, that line that I had you read, and again, thank you for that, about ATIP and passing the responsibilities, and the name Brennan. Now, the very quick breakdown on those redactions, you'll see on the screen there, it says B5 on the line that had ATIP in it, and B6 on the line that had Brennan in it. Now, B6 is easy. That's just privacy information. Brennan's name is not as well known as everybody else, but it is known, so it's kind of a silly redaction.
So wait. So the B5, B6, that's the reason they give for redacting that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
okay, I didn't know that.
By law, this was not originally done, and this is what's interesting about older FOIA release documents. There'll be redactions, but no citation. As the years went on and FOIA was, amended and updated and so on and so forth, it is now by law that they have to cite why they're redacting the information that they are.
I like that.
And so
I like that a lot.
Absolutely, because it makes it easier to kind of decipher what exactly are they saying here. So B6 is that privacy information. If it was a telephone number, a bank account number,
how many are there? Do you know?
There's 9.
Got it.
There's B1 through B9. What you see the most of is B6. That's again the privacy information, so names and all that. B1 is another one that you see a lot, especially with what I do, because I go after the secrets of secrets. So it's all classified information. So B1 is classified. B5, what we see here, is essentially what they call internal deliberation. Now, internal deliberation is kind of like if you and I, we worked for the government. Ooh, that's going to be a conspiracy theory that starts. So you and I are working for the government, and you and I are deciding about what we're going to say in a statement for the general public. Our banter back and forth about the creation of that statement would be exempted under B5 because we're internally deliberating, and the U.S. government believes they should have some privacy during that process. Then the final statement is released.
They privatize, or they make it private, all the spitballing that they're doing back there.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're spitballing. Okay, let's.
Right.
This is not for the public.
And that's what they want to kind of shield with those types of redactions. B5 is also known as the redacted if you want to exemption. And what I mean by that is if the government wants to redact something, B5 is a very easy fallback because it's very hard to fight for people like me. So when you see a B5, it's like, well, how do you argue that it's not internal deliberation? They use B5 for draft documents.
You can't.
It's very hard. So that's the government knows that. And so that's why in the FOIA world, for people like me, we call it that redacted if you want to. It needs reform desperately. It needs to be revamped because it's too easy for the government to hide behind it. So in relation to this document, they fell on B5 on the line that says Elizondo was passing on the ATIP responsibilities to Neil Tipton. And what's strange about that is why? Why are they going to do that? Why are they redacting something that's already in the public domain? And I want to stress that again. We've already seen this document to those who pay attention. New York Post published it when they published Luis Elizondo's IG complaint to the DOD. This was one of the pieces of evidence that Luis Elizondo submitted. So it's been in the public realm already. So that doesn't by law just say, oh, well, we can't redact it. But why use a B5? And that's what's very kind of confusing. It's like they're trying to cover up this line and admit that there's this ATIP reference in the Neil Tipton email. So that was the release. There was a couple other emails in there.
I do want to go to those next emails, but I have a couple of questions on this real quick. So if I read this carefully, right, exactly what they redacted are the words helps you better assume the new responsibilities for ATIP, right? Because they could have started redacting at better assume the new responsibilities of ATIP, right? Like just that, or just ATIP. Why helps you better assume the new responsibilities for ATIP? Is there, when I read this, and again, granted, this is from Lue, but it's saying ATIP, I'm assuming ATIP is a real program by reading this, and that it had older responsibilities and it's got new responsibility, right? Meaning there's a lot to read into that. When you see that, right, there's a lot to tangentially becomes truth now from reading this. You think that's a reason it got redacted because they're trying to paint this picture that ATIP was never a real program, or I don't know.
Well, that's the question. Is that what
That's
they're
the big
doing?
question,
And
right? Yeah.
even though I do respectfully disagree with a lot of how Luis Elizondo framed it in the tweet that you read, and I'm happy to explain why. I mean, I know a lot of
Yeah.
people think it's nitpicking, but I respectfully disagreed with some of what he said. But he did hit it when he said that they can't redact something if it embarrasses the agency. That is in language that they have to follow, that they can't just redact it because they feel it's going to embarrass the agency that's doing the redactions, in this case, the DOD. So is that a possibility? Absolutely. And then it's up to me to prove that in a appeal. Now, I didn't try and fight that because there's absolutely no way that I can prove that they're hiding it because of embarrassment. So I really hit the public interest angle, which it is. It's of high public interest, obviously covered by the media quite a bit. And essentially, when it comes to B5, the way you fight it, for anybody who cares, is you try and outweigh public interest versus their desire for essentially secrecy, and how public interest should outweigh and trump all of that, because we're not dealing with a classified issue. If we were dealing with a classified issue, my argument would be different. But since we're clearly dealing with unclassified information, stuff that's been in the public realm, then, let's see it.
What's the point? Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
What's the point of redacting? Now, some people may ask, well, why the hell do you fight for that? Because who cares? You already know what it says. The reason is that page number 2. And that page number 2 that's entirely redacted is also cited with the same exemption. Now, why I point that out?
Let me bring this up.
If I can win the one, I can win the other. And that means that they'll re-review it under their new eyes, because the appellate authority will hopefully review that in addition to the FOIA office as well. See that gray square? That's the document.
Wait, what? Are you serious?
Yeah. No, I'm being dead serious. Yeah, go ahead and click on it.
What the?
Yeah.
What?
Now, look at the top left. It says B5 and B6.
Yeah.
So that is
what the hell?
Yeah, those are the cited redactions. So this is the memo that Luis Elizondo wrote. Now, I want to see this. So me fighting that other line, because we've seen that. Nobody has seen this that I'm aware of.
The memo, you're saying, this whole memo. Got it. Wow.
Yeah. So if I can make the case to re-review the B5, I understand B6 will probably remain. So any names on this memo, any phone numbers, sure, totally get that. Those are redactions you see, and they're hard to fight, but no one really cares about the telephone numbers, but it's the B5. So they're trying to exempt the whole thing. So that's what I want to see, and that's why I filed. So where I again respectfully disagreed with Mr. Elizondo on this was he started citing the executive order. That's the EO 12958.
Oh God, I'm going to bring that up real quick.
Yeah. And again, I know that you'll get hate mail just because I'm saying this, because people are going to think it's nitpicking. But we have to, if we are fighting this legally, and I say we because we're all kind of in this fight together for transparency and stuff like that. Executive Order 12958 has been superseded actually a couple times already. What currently stands is Executive Order 13526. There's a reason why these things are rewritten, reissued, redone by the President of the United States. So 12958 was a very kind of, we'll call it outdated way to argue this. But the thing that stood out more to me was there's not 2 reasons to redact information. Sadly, it's not that easy. It's not just classified or it's personal privacy. That's not it. There's 9 exemptions. And what I'm fighting here has nothing to do with a classified exemption or a personal privacy exemption, but rather what they call internal deliberation. So is that nitpicking? I know people are going to say yes in some corners of this conversation, but it's very, very important that we realize the argument that the government is trying to put up to hide this from us. And if we inaccurately portray that, we're fighting a battle that doesn't have another side to win from, or to win.
That makes sense.
Because, and so that's why I again, respectfully disagreed. I asked people to tag Luis Elizondo because at that time of writing it, I was blocked. But I said, this is, again, essentially a respectful disagreement. But I felt compelled because he was citing my story with inaccurate arguments, with inaccurate arguments attached. And so that's why I wrote that. And again, those posts aren't popular. I know that. But my story was being cited. And when my story is cited, I want to make sure that things that go along with it are accurate as well. And he unblocked me over it. So apparently he wasn't too ticked off.
See, you got unblocked.
Yeah. So we had a nice exchange. I did just an animated hat tip gift to him.
I saw that. That was great, by the way.
Yeah, one of my favorite actors. And he had a phenomenal return tweet of Val Kilmer in response, both of which were from Tombstone. Yeah.
See, I can't sit because I'm blocked. I don't get to see y'all's back and forth, which sucks. But okay, so that's what happened. Y'all tipped your hats to each other, and
that's it. Yeah, and that's what do you think? It should be about.
What do you think? Do you think you guys are on good terms now, sort of, or at least neutral terms?
Well, I've never considered ourselves on bad terms. I was blocked. To be honest with you, I don't know what the
you don't know why you initially got blocked?
Well, look, I mean, a lot of people are going to say it's the obvious that you're picking on him and meaning me, and you're, harping on him. If that were the case, I think he would have blocked me a long time ago. So I'm not really sure. It was around the time I was working on a new story that he may not have liked. That's already long been published. So I don't really know. I've had, for the most part, pleasant exchanges with his attorney. So to go back to your question, I've always felt neutral, if not on good grounds. There was a long time where we had chats and talked on the phone, and there was no problem. But
you guys did an interview together.
We did a couple. Yeah, we did a couple. And
you did a couple.
Yeah. And one of the stories that I wrote, I mean, was in his IG complaint. So he obviously.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean,
yeah, this was the story I wrote where I discovered that his emails were destroyed by the Department of Defense. And sadly, okay. I do feel it was misrepresented in the complaint a bit. He said all of his files, including emails, but then we kind of broadened it a little bit. That I felt was a little inaccurate because that was not the story. And then he also said that it was Susan Goff, that the Pentagon spokesperson. She played zero role in that. This was all through the FOIA office and through the legal side of the DOD. It had nothing to do with public affairs. And quite the opposite. I actually tried to get Goff on behalf of the Pentagon to comment on that story.
Yeah.
And she would not, beyond what I had already gotten from the DOD legal side. So, yeah, it was really kind of bizarre. But so it's, I think maybe he's got a love-hate roller coaster type relationship for me, because, there's some stories that I feel that he has appreciated and liked, and then others, not so much. So,
well, that's the thing, John. I don't think
it's, I don't think it's anything negative, but I know that, he's been unhappy, and for that, I'm sorry, but I can't change following the evidence and changing the stories because of personal feelings.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. You just FOIA, you ask for stuff from our government. They give you documents. You then post that, and that's it. We decide what to do with it, how we want to, take it. And I'm glad he unblocked you. I'm glad he just sees, okay, this dude is just putting up facts. Whatever those facts are, wherever it leads, it doesn't matter. You have no agenda, from your end, right? And I see that you looking into all kinds of different stuff. That's why I appreciate what you do. Now I get it. Maybe from his standpoint, oh God, I don't want that coming out. But sorry, I mean, that's, you know what I mean? You're a public figure at this point. You're putting yourself out there. You're asking for tax dollars to be used. You're talking to Congress. You're trying to get them to, I mean, in my opinion, yeah, all bets are out. We're allowed to look into this stuff and figure out what's going on. And again, that's why I appreciate so much of the information that you provide, because it's just real black and white information in the sense that just nuts and bolts. Like, this is what's going on. Why is this going on? And look, sometimes it helps him out, right? He even used one of your articles in his complaint. Now this comes out about him and ATIP, and you posted. It's not like you kept that secret so that you could keep the narrative going. That's what would have proved that, but that's clearly not what you're doing. Any sane person that follows what you do knows that that's not going on. So yeah, I mean, that is quite interesting. I'm glad you guys are, I'm glad he unblocked you, if I'm being real.
So am I, honestly. And I was kind of upset that he was had me blocked for the time that he did, only because I honestly believe this. I believe people are just stronger together. And we obviously stand
100%.
on common ground in quite a few different areas. I know that I ask tough questions. I know I am, as some people term it, nitpicky, but that's what we have to do. And the truth, is not going to be harmed by nitpicking at it. I don't fabricate anything ever, not once. I've never done something like that. And I think it's just important to work together and be nice in the sandbox, so to speak. And just, if he doesn't like the questions I'm asking, which is fine, he doesn't have to answer them. But
100%.
I still think that they're out there. And one thing that I will add too, it's been really interesting to see the reaction from this. Number one, not only because Luis Elizondo unblocked me at this point, so that's cool.
I'm sure there were people that didn't like that.
I'm sure,
which is
and
weird,
I'm sure
right?
he got a lot of what for it, just because it's like, oh, no, you can't talk to that guy. He's the devil. What are you doing?
But I'm glad he did it. Exactly.
And but I'm glad he did it. But the other interesting thing too was the reaction by the general public. And the reaction to it from quite a few different, again, what I'll call like more of the JG haters and the Luis Elizondo, mega supporters, was like immediately they're coming after me going, you need to apologize to him. You've been pushing this button for so long. Now you have irrefutable proof, this, that. And somebody says, I've got to do a mea culpa. Another one says that I have to do an apology video, all this kind of stuff. Now, these are the same exact people that trash any FOIA response that comes out that makes him look bad. But now they see something that they like, and it is like not challenged at all. It is gospel. And it's like, see, aha, this is proof. But when I came out with the FOIA documents that were all classified internal memorandums inside the DOD, that was at more of the upper echelon of the DOD when Luis Elizondo resigned. And around December, these are fascinating documents, but they're often dismissed by his supporters because Gary Reed was involved in it. It was outlining in great detail the chronology of Luis Elizondo's resignation, the multiple resignation letters, the fact that they couldn't find anything about essentially ATIP or his directorship of it, that they felt that he was embellishing. There was even a counterintelligence concern because of his abrupt resignation from the DOD. I mean, it goes on, and these documents are pretty crazy to read through. Well, those are just automatically dismissed by the same people that are telling me I got to go down to my knees and beg for forgiveness because this stuff came from FOIA. You can't have a selective bias like that. You can't. And that's why I publish everything. And look, you're right. I could have sat on it if I felt that I had a narrative that I needed to maintain. Hey, file it away, because sadly, and I say this genuinely, sadly, not a lot of people use FOIA. And not a lot of people look for these answers. They just either sit and wait for the answers to be given to them, whatever is chosen, from the other people that they listen to, but they don't proactively go out and get things. I try for it all. I mean, I blast everything out there, and that's what I do. So it was very interesting to see that juxtaposition when FOIA produces something that people don't like, some people don't like. You're the devil for putting it out there, and a government agent working for them, which I've been accused a lot of in the last, especially last couple months. But if it's something that they like, it's without question. It's like, boom, gospel.
Yeah.
You can't operate that way because the government lies about this topic too. So
no, you're right.
Where do you draw that line of belief and disbelief when it comes to documents and FOIA releases?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I saw the same thing. Like, this is okay if John puts this out, but not this other stuff that he put out that you reamed him for. Let's be real. I see people quoting your documents, using your information all the time, and at the same breath talking mad, shit about you. It's like,
and FOIA. And that's what kills me.
It's like, what, dude? It's, again, for me personally, I see stuff like that. I go, okay, that's disingenuous. To the side. Their opinion, right? Like, it's so beyond the pale. It's like, okay, I'm not even really going to listen to that person's opinion because there's a little bit of confirmation bias. And I get that we all have that a little bit. But some people have it to an extreme. And all they're looking for is documents you release that confirm their narrative. Anything outside of that is bullshit. It's a lie. It's a, cover up, but not this. If the cover up goes for what they want, like you said, hey, all good. If it doesn't, if the cover up's the other way, you're like, nope, I don't like this stuff. And then you somehow personally get attached to the story where does that make sense? Like all of a sudden you're part of the story. You have this intention. It's like, wait a second. John's just, first of all, he's doing all the work that, a lot of people are not going to do. So we should thank him, thank you for doing that work for us, getting that information. We can do what we want with it. But I hate that you get dragged in personally to the story for sure, man. I think you handle it beautifully. Again, like I told you last time you were on, you definitely have a shit ton of people that support you and what you do and love what you do. And even Lue Elizondo at the end of the day realizes the importance of what you do, man. He does. He's not stupid. Anyone got half a brain can realize, okay, this is important what John does. We may not always like what comes out of it, but that's not John's fault, right? And let's be real, if they want other information out, they can FOIA it too and find out, or maybe even ask you, hey, John, what do you think about looking into this for us, or whatever the thing may be. So yeah, man, look, I'm glad it came out. I'm glad this all happened. And, again, you got more stuff that you've popped out recently as well. Like speaking of those emails from James Lukatsky, right? I saw Lue Elizondo tweet about that as well, right? Like, hey, I don't always agree with this guy, but boom, look at what he's doing, right? So, yeah. What do you think about these Lukatsky emails? Well, first of all, is there any part of this Lue Elizondo email thing that we didn't cover before we move on to this next thing that I didn't?
I'm sure I'll think of it after the show, but no, I mean, there's I think the closing thought I will say on it is that we've only talked about the 2 emails. Last month, I published a story that went into some of the other emails that were in this Neil Tipton exchange. They did not mention ATIP, but they were broad stroking the idea that the responsibilities of a portfolio was being transferred to Neil Tipton. And the one key email that I do actually want to bring up was sent about a month prior to the ATIP email that we talked about. And that was Neil Tipton to Luis Elizondo. And one of his emails, one of Luis Elizondo's emails was very, very highly complimentary of Neil Tipton, really saying he was right for the job and perfect for it and this and that. And essentially Neil Tipton responded and said, thanks, but I still really don't know what this is. Like, and he was completely kind of confused over what that is, like what this whole thing is all about. And so it was kind of an interesting insight into the fact that Luis Elizondo's thinking he's right for the job, he's perfect, and he's very complimentary to him. But then in the same respect, it's the response was, I don't really know what this is about, So I think that what people have to do, my whole point with bringing that up is these are big puzzles, and it's so fascinating to try and put all these pieces together and paint this picture, because we don't have all the pieces yet. And sometimes they take years to get, and you get that one piece and you put it on the puzzle and it's just a little tiny bit more of the picture, but it's fascinating nonetheless. And so you see the internal dynamics of that conversation and how it unfolded and so on. So I would urge everybody that, look backwards, read that story. I wrote it last week, last month on April 23rd.
Hang on. Is it this right here?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't see my screen, right?
Well, it says I can, but yeah, those are the attachments of. Yeah, if you scroll up to the top of the article, I can tell you if that's the right article or not, just by
ATIP and the Pentagon. Yeah, that's it, right? Okay.
So the gist of this one, just so your audience and you are aware, I had discovered like a year or two ago that there were multiple emails that were sent by Luis Elizondo to the Public Affairs Office in an attempt to get the DOD to shift their stance on him and on ATIP. And in an effort to do that, he had sent in some attachments, which we later determined were in his IG complaint. There were 3 pages, as you can see there, of the string of email back and forth between him, Neil Tipton, and a third gentleman that we talked about earlier, Brennan McKernan, who was CC'd on some of that. The fourth page that was in the IG complaint, which was not in this FOIA, was the ATIP page. And when I wrote this story, I kept pushing the DOD saying, there should be one more, because he's trying to convince the DOD, Elizondo's trying to convince the DOD, please essentially change your stance. Here's proof that I was the director of ATIP and studied UAP. Why wouldn't you send him the ATIP email? And for that story, I had gone through his attorney, Elizondo's attorney, to try and determine why that was. But I never got an answer. I wasn't told if it was sent to Susan Goff or not. I was just told it was genuine. So there's so many different moving parts to this puzzle, and it's so difficult to put them together. But
I don't know how you do it, John. If I'm being honest, I just don't even know how you do it, dude.
The best trick is to file and forget it, because if you just keep thinking about it, like, you go nuts.
Good point. I can't even imagine.
I mean, and of course I say that facetiously. I looked up because somebody on X asked me, was there communication between the first response, what they call an interim response in 2021, and the final response in 2024? So I looked it up, and there were like 8 or 9 follow-ups that I did over the course of quite a few years.
Wow.
Asking, like, what's the status on this? Most of which were ignored. 2 of them I got responses of what they call ECDs, or estimated completion dates. And each ECD kept getting pushed. So it was like, they said, oh, it's going to be January 2023. I go, okay, great. And then, like, June rolls around, and it's like, well, still waiting. Do you guys have it? Oh, sorry, it's been extended to December 2023.
They just keep pushing it.
They keep pushing it. Yeah. So that was the only correspondence. But
wow.
Anyway, that I did want to point out that it's not just this one email. There's just a lot of stories to it, and I'll end it with this: the story is definitely not over. And you can call that
when you say what do you mean by, like, what story exactly?
There is one more story element that I was going to publish in the last one, but I had to split it up because certain cases have to complete. But I can tell you that this specific email chain, the story's not over. And we will see. That's not an open-ended tease, but rather I believe I know what's coming, but I need the DOD to complete the request in the case for it. And then I can finally finish it. But and the reason why I'm just not talking about it openly now is I can't prove it. And I don't like to, like,
I get it.
Tell you I can't. But once these FOIA requests complete and we see even more of the picture, there's something here that both sides of this conversation don't want us to know about. And I'm sorry. I love the fact that Luis Elizondo unblocked me, but there are certain elements of this story that he does not address and talk about. The DOD has been incredibly bad with their messaging on this. And obviously now starting to redact references to ATIP, when, look, if it wasn't a real program or whatever, that's all fine and dandy, but what's the point? So both sides of this, there is something else here. And now with this email chain, discovered a little bit more that, there's an issue here, and it needs to come out.
So, let me steelman this back to you. So is that the story that is yet to be completed is, to put it in simple terms, is that Luis Elizondo, the fact that he may or may not have ran ATIP, and that what ATIP studied, right, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program that came out of OSAP, what you're saying is that's not for sure yet if he did run that program or not? Is that what you mean by the big story is not over yet?
No, in regards to that big story not over, no. And in fact, I will say it kind of plays into the secrecy on the Pentagon side when it comes to that particular email chain. So not about the question
just what they're willing to admit about ATIP.
Exactly. When it comes to, because to some, this email completely proves that Luis Elizondo was the director of ATIP, this, that, and the other thing. Even in one of the emails that Luis Elizondo wrote to Susan Goff, he had conceded that essentially it was more of a portfolio. So not necessarily the program that was being touted in the mainstream media as this Pentagon secret UFO study and program. But essentially he said in the email to Susan Goff, like, hey, if you can call it a portfolio if you want, meaning it probably wasn't really a program, but more so something that he was doing in addition to his other duties. Now, in fairness to the New York Times, they did actually kind of say that he had other duties at the same time. But I still believe that the whole thing was framed incredibly wrong. So this whole question mark on whether he was the director of it or not, to be honest with you, I think it's getting into semantics. I've said this for years. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge it, but I don't really doubt that he had interest and he did something when it came to UAP within the Pentagon. But was it this big secret Pentagon UAP program, UFO study that the New York Times and Politico broke in 2017? The answer is no. And you don't even have to take my word for that. The stories have changed over the years. So if you really pay attention, look, I'm sorry, the stories have kind of morphed. But on top of that, even Dr. James Lukatsky, who I know we're about to talk about, who was the undisputed director of OSAP, that's no one's refuted that. And that was a program that was on the books. It was funded. There's paperwork on top of paperwork for that. So that's all provable. So even he's come out and said that essentially the New York Times article was primarily wrong. And
I've heard that too.
At the Pentagon, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, that was in their preface or intro or chapter 1, whatever it was. But
George Knapp said it multiple times. They got the story wrong.
Yeah. So that's the issue. So it's like people chastise those like myself especially top of the list, asking these types of questions. But guess what? There's a reason why we were asking them. We could smell something wasn't right from almost day one. October of 2017, I had no reservations. I was like, this is awesome. I loved watching that press conference. I was filing FOIAs by the time the TTSA to the Stars Academy press conference was over. So it was like Lue Elizondo was still sitting on that stage. I had FOIAs written inside the DOD by the time he came off stage. So that's how interested I was interested. I was like, this is awesome, And it wasn't until about December, which ironically was around when the articles came out in the New York Times. But the FOIA responses started coming back negative when they shouldn't have. And then that kind of snowballed from there. So it's it's been a very long, what's it been now? 7-ish years.
What does it matter though? Time. Like let's say we find out, okay, Lue Elizondo didn't run this huge program, but he had a little something and he did it on the side. And what changes? What changes moving forward about anything? His book is still going to come out. Question. He's still looked highly upon. He's still going to have a documentary. He can still talk about this stuff. He can still, like, what actually changes?
I love that question because it's a really good one. When, in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter of the semantics of were you director of a program named ATIP? Was ATIP really a program or portfolio? That part doesn't matter. To me, as a researcher and somebody who's been around the block for quite some time, and people, and I'm speaking broadly here, people that have come out with stories, if you start catching embellishments on certain levels, even though those levels that you kind of saw those embellishments and maybe some stuff was fuddled here and there, maybe those specific points don't mean a lot, but what else was? What else in the greater good in the name of public interest and trying to get congressional interest and legislation passed and all that, have we built a foundation on something that is not rock solid? And that's what I've always said. This isn't personal against Lue Elizondo or David Grush or whomever. What it is about is that I believe these phenomena, multiple facets of it, plural, I say it plural for a reason, there's something to this. I believe that there should be congressional interest. I just do. I believe that there should be funding towards it. I just do. I believe that. But if you get to that point where they're listening, the powers that be, and you have built a foundation based on some embellishments, some fuddling this and that a little bit. Hey, this was a great program. And then you find out later, maybe it wasn't really a program. All those things that may seem little to people out there that are big fans of the UFO topic and they don't care about portfolio versus program, to Congress, they do. And when that foundation starts to crack a little bit, all of a sudden it starts to fall. And when that happens, and I was crucified for saying this a year and a half ago. I said congressional interest was waning. And when you look at it, I'm sorry, that has been proven true.
100%.
And the reason I say that is you have a lot less names that you had a year and a half or so ago talking about UAP, putting their weight of their office and their name behind it. They're not around anymore. Even Gillibrand's recent comments, and shout out to Askapol on they're constantly asking, politicians these types of UAP related questions. Gillibrand seemed kind of like caught off guard with some of the details about the language that passed and didn't pass. So it's like, look, she was a year and a half ago a hero to this entire movement, and now seems kind of in the dark. That's not to be disrespectful to her, but she's probably moved on. She's probably got other priorities in her political sphere than this. And that's probably why it sounded like she wasn't there. You've got the Marco Rubio, who isn't on TV as much as he once was a year and a half ago on this issue. So are these names just kind of losing interest? When you ask them, of course, they're going to say that's not true, that they're still working on it. Another hearing is on the way, coming soon. That's all great because they don't want their constituents to think that they're failing on this. So of course they're still interested, and of course they're still trying. But I'm sorry, take a step back. No matter how you view this, take a step back and you look at those names that are were constantly in the spotlight before, and you can split that number by more than half, in my opinion. And now you have Tim Burchett, who I really like, by the way. I think he's cool. I mean, he says some wonky
hilarious
things now and then. Yeah. But you've got Tim Burchett, you've got Anna Paulina Luna, Moskowitz, I think, in my opinion, has kind of fallen off a little bit on this. I know he's still involved, but that's kind of what you have now. And although that's great, you do have that waning interest. So I go back to that foundation. Did they put all their eggs in the baskets that maybe were fuddled a little bit, embellished a little bit, or maybe just wrong? And the David Grush stories and the people that went to him, we don't know the details of that and how much evidence that they came aboard. So David Grush could be completely genuine, conveying the truth to what he believes it is, but maybe it's wrong. And they've built that foundation on David Grush, who's appeared in front of Congress, on the claims of ATIP/Luis Elizondo and the breadcrumbs that have dropped on that. All the eggs went into that basket. And what did we have on the Arrow report? And then I swear to you, I'm going to stop talking after this point. But what did we have?
You're fine.
What did we have on that Arrow report? And it was primarily an expose of these big claims, big claims, shooting them all down, finding no evidence of it, and how it all roots to a select group of people. And I did a video breakdown of this, of what Arrow missed. And what Arrow missed was take David Grush and Luis Elizondo/ATIP out of the picture, right? Take all the 2017 post-ufology out. You missed a hell of a lot, meaning Arrow. And there is an amazing stack of documents and case files and stuff that stretches back decades. And even though stuff that stretches back decades is not necessarily as fun and as sexy as alien bodies or NHI bodies and spacecraft, that's provable. FOIA has brought out some amazing pieces of evidence to support that UFO material was in the halls of the CIA in one of their chief scientists' office in the mid to late 70s, right? That's provable. So they have material, absolutely, but there's documented material, not what somebody said to somebody else, but rather where was that push in the Arrow report to see, hey, what did you guys do in the 1970s? What was there? There's a lot of documents from the CIA that have now destroyed. In fact, I'll be writing this in the next couple of days. These are 2 more letters from the CIA about UFO documents that were destroyed/lost. So they released part of them heavily redacted.
Wow.
I go after them under the mandatory declassification review, and they're gone. So there's so much that Arrow, I think, missed in that historical study that FOIA has helped bring out, and to support that this needs a lot more. So putting all the eggs in that basket, look, Grush could be speaking the gospel truth, and so is Luis Elizondo, but we don't have that evidence. So let's put some eggs in a basket over here and start pushing the CIA on stuff that, yes, maybe not as sexy, but stuff that you can prove. And that's your foundation, and you build from there. My diatribe's over. I'm sorry.
I mean, that was well said. No, that was well said, man. Honestly, look, I'll say one thing. I think basically what you said is right. Yeah, basically, these details matter, because if we're going to build the foundation for investigation and looking funding and research and everything, studying, right, we got to know what we're building on as we go forward. So yeah, I mean, look, you make a good argument, you make a good point, and well said, man. All right, well, look, let's go on to this James Lakatsky thing real quick. So yeah, just kind of give us a rundown here, like what, I'm Brent, right? I don't know anything.
No worries.
What's like in that sense, right? Like what's going on? James Lakatsky emails destroyed.
Yeah. This will be a quicker story for you, but essentially, yeah, James Lakatsky, very similar to Luis Elizondo's emails, have been destroyed. Got that in writing, confirmed it. So I've had multiple FOIA requests to James Lakatsky, to the DIA on James Lakatsky's email box to search for certain keywords like UFO, ATIP, so many acronyms, UAP. You take the certain keywords and you essentially file the request for a search of his email box. Now, certain ones came back with no records. UFO was a big one. Elizondo was the second one. We know that there was communication between the two. So red flags started popping up in my head going, well, wait a minute, why aren't these coming up positive? And some of these I didn't even publish in the public realm, just simply because it was like, well, people are going to think I'm attacking Luis Elizondo again because Lakatsky had no emails that referenced or was communication back and forth. But one finally did come in that I had appealed, and during the appeal process, they had determined that the documents were destroyed per the records retention schedule, and they cited it and so on. So without boring you to death with all these records retention schedule numbers and so on, essentially what schedules are, the records retention schedules are just that. They outline per a schedule how long you're supposed to keep documents for. So it kind of varies with position. So a director of an agency, director of the CIA or DIA, they're saved in perpetuity. So that means
makes sense. Makes sense.
Totally. Yet other people are not. And so what's determined with Lakatsky is he's likely 7 years. Well, my FOIA request that went in should have been in within the time frame where these email boxes should still exist, or at least a portion thereof.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they did not. Now,
that's interesting.
I'm still digging into Lakatsky. What I can say beyond any shadow of a doubt was that Luis Elizondo's email box was deleted and destroyed early. That's
too early.
Not good. Yes.
Yeah, because he left
retention schedule.
In what? When did he leave? 2017, right?
October 2017. Yeah.
Yeah. Same as Grush in the sense that he left and then comes out, right? Like in that sense, I remember Grush.
I'll be curious
retiring
to see,
in April.
Which some of that, because I've.
What about Grush's emails? Have you put in FOIAs
yeah,
for that?
I've got quite a few requests. We'll see. If they should still be around, because he just retired around what, 21, 22 or whatever, maybe 23. I don't remember. It's not in front of me.
Can you request like Biden's emails? You can't do that, can you?
Presidential records are not subject to FOIA because of the Presidential Records Act. Now, the reason for that is because it isolates the White House from people like me, isolates the White House, and then once they are out of office, after 4 or 8 years, the Presidential Records Act determines that all of their records go into their library, and then their library is opened. I believe it's within 4 years or 4 years, something like that, from the time that they exit. So then you'll see their presidential library open, and then it's subject to FOIA. So a quick note on
you should make like film your own FOIA masterclass and then sell it, dude. People would buy that. They would, because they would. No, but you need to know all these little ins and detail. Like for someone who wants to get into it, they don't know what to do. What do I do? Start FOIAing? I don't even know the right verb to use, the word to use, much less. No, you know what I mean? Totally fine. It's like is that a thing? You FOIA? He's FOIAing. I don't know. Yeah. Like it sounds so weird.
I've made up words over the years. FOIA a bull. I don't even know. Like I've heard some other people now say it, so maybe I didn't make it up, but I said it for quite a while. I'm like, I think I'm making this stuff up as I go, and then I heard somebody else say it in an interview. I was like, oh, I don't know if I made that up, but that is so
it sounds
cool
good.
I'm not the only one. Yeah, so FOIA-able.
It works. That's funny.
But yeah, FOIA-ing is a lot of fun. It's a great hobby. But yeah,
I'm just saying.
You're good at it. Once the Presidential Records Act kicks in and the library opens, the FOIA process starts. So then you can FOIA presidential records. I found out years ago that Obama's presidential library, according to them, has like thousands of files on ATIP. Go figure. Now, whether that's ATIP or ATIP OSAP or both, who knows? That was
either
one
way,
that actually Luis Elizondo
right? Either way,
tweeted out. Either way, I'll take it. But it's
he tweeted
take
that
like
out.
17, yeah, because it was huge when I had announced that, because it was one of the first requests that went into the Obama library. They get flooded whenever the doors open.
I'm
so
sure,
to speak.
Of course,
people are just waiting.
Sense.
They're like filing, and they had estimated, if I remember, like 17 years for the request to be processed. That's what they told me.
17 years?
17 years or something. Not off the number. Yeah. So I was like, well, wait a minute. So I tried to reduce it and take out newspaper clippings and stuff like that. It's a way to kind of help reduce the load a little bit. Any publicly available information, it still didn't change really anything.
Jesus
so very
Christ.
Cool discovery, but then it's like, well, really, I'm gonna be dead by then,
I mean,
I've tried to tweet to Obama, shocked that he didn't respond. But
wow,
but essentially
John,
saying,
does he block you too? No, I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. Why would you do that, Mr. President? But no, joking aside, I was just like, it was huge. Like, it was one of the most viral tweets I think I had done at the time, and then quite a few different places picked it up. That there was so much material being hidden there, but it would take years to come out.
What else is out there hidden, John? Right? Like, let's be real. Like, what else is out there hidden about these programs? About that, it gets me thinking as you're saying this right now. Is like, you really can't make a definitive decision one way or the other as all this information has come out, just knowing there's probably way more out there that we don't know about. So it's hard to make a hard line decision in the sand one way or the other, which is interesting.
There's a ton.
I don't know.
There's absolutely a ton. And to bridge the last two kind of segments of your story, that's why records retention schedules kill me, because Luis Elizondo, like I said, they went against protocol, and I know that it really upset some higher ups, and that's also another story that I'll be having an update. Hopefully,
I mean, that's
soon.
Fishy. That's fishy
Absolutely.
For Luis Elizondo. If I'm Luis Elizondo, I'm thinking that's fishy.
Absolutely. And then the question is, was it strategic? Was it strategic against him? So we'll see how this plays out. But I do know that it's a bigger problem with records retention, where agencies are supposed to keep it for, a certain amount of time, and they just, chop the files whenever they want.
But you think Lukatsky's email destruction, or whatever we're going to call it, was valid? You think it just followed the normal retention schedule? Oh, no, because you put your FOIA in, you're saying within that window, yet they still did it. Do they have to honor the FOIA? But what if it's already destroyed? Does that make sense? Like, if a FOIA comes in, does that make the file stay longer, even if they haven't gotten to the FOIA? Does that make sense? Like an order coming into a restaurant.
No. So my request could go in, and this is my kind of public fight that I've posted quite a few times with the U.S. government. If you file a FOIA and the FOIA processing times outweigh the records retention schedule time, that to me is a huge issue. You need to reform either the records retention schedules, you need to reform FOIA, or you need to reform both.
I agree.
Away from, was Elizondo targeted, was Lukatsky targeted? Well, I can tell you outright that a lot of times there are legal destructions of records, and you're losing all that history, and it's perfectly legal for them to do that per the schedule, but you're losing so much, and that's what really upsets me. And then on top of it, when you add in we'll call it the human element of, let's say, Luis Elizondo, since we were talking about him, and his kind of argument with the DOD of, yes, I did this, and the DOD says, no, you didn't. If that information can clear somebody's name that devoted a lot of their life to the U.S. government and to the U.S. military and so on, why would we not want to maintain that? Why would we not want to allow someone like Mr. Elizondo to be able to clear his name? Instead, records retention schedules, which weren't followed in his case, but records retention schedules come aboard, and wipe out all of his emails. And if that was the proof, how is this fair? Lakatsky, same deal. It's a less personal with Lakatsky. It's more about what did OSAP really do and not do versus more of that personal thing. Because again, his position's not disputed and so on. So they haven't really kind of touched his reputation. They have kind of more attacked Lue Elizondo versus Lakatsky. So it's less personal, but still as important on, well, what did you guys do? You know, what were these taxpayer dollars for? So you have so many different elements and layers to the story on why these records retention schedules are BS, if you ask me. And with the 21st century where we are, technology being cheap, and the amount of ungodly piles of money that we're spending on other things, you would think that some technological upgrades for some data storage could allow us to maintain these records, maybe again, not in perpetuity, but for longer, because it needs to be maintained. So away from UFOs, away from Lakatsky, away from Elizondo, we are losing valuable history. And in many cases that I've proven now, way ahead of schedule, and something that there should be slaps on the wrist, if not more. And it seems like no one cares.
Look, Google does it. Are you kidding me? I got emails from 30 years. I mean, what are we talking about? This is insane. Honestly, that's insane. Absolutely. I get physical records, but digital, let's be real. Let's get with it. Let's get to the nearest Best Buy. Pentagon can't go to Best Buy and buy some hard drive. Of course, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean? Of course, we should be able to do that. No, man. I mean, so it sounds like, again, just to sort of round this out, like there is something suspicious in my mind about, now I'm not saying what that suspicion is, but more questions about why Lakatsky's emails were destroyed early on, James Lakatsky was proven to be the director, at least for part of the time, of OSAP, right? Program, however you feel about it, their job was to look into paranormal and UFO, whatever. And they had funding from our government. And Luis Elizondo, who, depending on how you look at it, was the head of this other program that came out of OSAP, ATIP. And his emails were also destroyed prematurely, right? And they were, you know, as Luis Elizondo put it, ATIP was supposed to be this like a sniper rifle, more designed for UAP specifically, as opposed to OSAP being more general. But that is interesting. I mean, however, again, wherever you fall on the ladder of believer, not believer in this phenomenon, that is suspicious, to say the least, that two people heading up programs or portfolios or whatever we want to call them, their stuff disappears. Like, who else's emails are disappearing, and why go through that? That means that's a concerted effort. Like, you got to go out of your way to get this done early. If you're super busy and have all this stuff going on, how do you have time to add this other protocol, this other mission, unless there's a reason that needs to go away early, right? Which is interesting. I don't know.
And records retention schedules just aren't on emails. There's various, you know, documents and types of documents that have different schedules. And that's what kills me, is that you're losing not just the emails, you're losing reports, you're losing program files, you're losing a lot of that is valuable history. So
what if you worked on something with somebody and you're part of the thing, right? But this other person is still working, but you're part of that report. Does that mean that goes away because you were attached to it somehow? Does that make sense? Like record retention, like how do they delete you out of everything if you worked with other people and other people does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they say his emails get destroyed, but what about the people that he sent emails to that still work at the government? Wouldn't they have those copies?
Yeah. So what I started, and so again, zoning in on the Luis Elizondo thing, was started filing requests to the people that he likely communicated with.
Correct.
That their records retention schedules would not essentially allow them to delete the records for the most part. And started coming up with emails. I mean, I found some classified and unclassified. Right. So I was able to uncover some, nothing to do with ATIP or UAP. So I'll make that note, but it was still interesting to kind of see it from the other side.
So Luis Elizondo could be giving you some tips on what to search for, who to put in, right?
Is always open to tips.
That's what I'm saying. Yes. Luis Elizondo, if you're listening, I'm blocked, but I know people that watch Vetted. Definitely talk to Luis Elizondo. Send him this message. Let's, like John said at the beginning, working together. We're so much stronger together. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? If I think that's it. I think that's the way to get to these emails, if I'm being honest. It's the back end, who it got sent to, and whatever. These emails are still out there. It's not like he just wrote emails to the ether. They always went to somebody, right? Or responded, and then they puts them all right as you respond, anyone who's done emails. So yeah, I don't know. I just think there would be a lot of information there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for. I've got a ton more that are still being processed. Jay Stratton, I've got quite a few on. I've got Travis Taylor, a lot of emails from Travis Taylor on some of the UAP work that he was doing. I published those a while back. So yeah, I mean, it's not all failure all the time with FOIA and emails, but when you look at the successes and you get a peek behind the curtain with it, and then you see something else that's been destroyed, it's absolutely killer, because you lose that history, and you lose so much with it. And I can't stress it enough. And it really does go to the heart of why I do what I do with the preservation. I've got thousands and thousands of FBI files. This is away from UFOs, but to prove the point, thousands of FBI files on individuals. And this is important history of the Bureau either investigating certain individuals and companies, or these certain individuals and companies wound up in investigations on other people and companies. Whatever it may be, these records are often destroyed. So I've got files in there in the archive that I've done that I got, let's say 10, 15 years ago, that are completely gone now. That wow. I was the only one who filed a FOIA for them. I was the only one that posted them online, and the FBI shredded the remaining ones, again, due to these records retention schedules. And sometimes things are just lost. The FBI had one of their facilities had a huge flood years ago, and they lost
that makes sense.
tons of material. So
this
stuff gets lost, and that's why I just believe in the preservation of it. There are so many reasons to do it, and hope more people get on board tooting that horn, because we need to do it.
No, absolutely, man. Look, I know we're running short on time, so let's jump to this last bit here that I just thought was interesting. It was sort of a random, I don't want to say random. I mean, yeah, well, to me, it was just a random tweet that I saw you put out about MH370. That's all I saw. That's what caught my eye, right? So just tell us a little bit about. I don't understand what's going on. You tweeted out this picture here.
Yeah. So I have filed tons of requests to the DoD. I've never seen that cover page before when it comes to a Freedom of Information Act request. I know what Privacy Act cover sheets are. There's also classified cover sheets. Those, I mean, I know what they are. I didn't know why it was on my FOIA request letter. So yeah, I blasted it out there going, what is going on here?
What is this thing?
It just so happened that the topic of the request was MH370. Now, a lot of people asked me to look into it, and I'm going to be full disclosure here. Sure. I think that the story that is circulating now, that's very popular in some circles with these videos and what happened to MH370, I've never been on that wagon. I think a lot of it is bunk. I think it's silly. I think there's a lot of fudging of the facts in this, and I won't go on the whole diatribe, but I'm not on that train. But I can separate my personal feelings from going after documents. And when it was said that one of the main researchers on this was talking to Arrow, boom, that to me is like, fine, I don't care what I personally think. I want to go see what's going on. And if Arrow's looking into it, if Arrow's doing nothing with it, if they laughed at it, if they think it's like, oh my gosh, this is the best case we have, whatever it is, I'll publish it out there. This was sadly no documents, but it was the letter acknowledging the request that I submitted. So, which made it even more weird, because the acknowledgement letters I usually get through email, because I work with the DoD FOIA office all the time on these cases, and so most of them are through email. And so that's number one. It was weird that it came through snail mail. But number two, this cover sheet on there about the Privacy Act and essentially, not releasing it to the public. And I thought, well, wait a minute, is this like an internal accident? Was it a new practice? Because I know that when it comes to Privacy Act information, let's say my information years ago, and they're still online. Actually, I was talking about this on a show like a month or two ago. So I was morbidly curious. And the house that I grew up in when I was, 15 years old and started filing FOIAs, that address I always tried to shield, simply because that was, where I grew up. It's where I lived. And, I didn't want it out there. The government had released it in quite a few different cases and case logs and to other FOIA requesters that wound up on the internet. Now, to anybody, that has any type of following on social media, you don't want your address out there. So like
Yeah.
20 years ago, I ended up doing a private mailbox and moved a couple times, but that's now you see my address, but it's just a private mailbox. My whole point being is that mistakes are made. And so I was curious, is this a new practice by the DOD? So I put that picture out there and then, sent some emails and made some phone calls, and they looked at it and they said, well, we think that this may have been a mistake. We're really sorry. You shouldn't get another one again. I was like, well, okay, it's weird. Of all the,
it's weird.
Of all of the FOIA cases to, have something weird happen. Of course,
on the MH370, right? Yeah, of course. It's going to add, I mean, look what it did to me. I was like, wait, what? Because I swear, cool anytime, it's very cool looking. You're right. When the first time MH370 the videos came out, I was like, oh, this is bullshit, and oh my god, and I even accused Ashton Forbes of making the videos. I was like, I think he made these things, if I'm being honest. And then I don't know what happened. Something in the new year, it's my first year with Vetted. I started, I'm figuring out this community. I thought, you know what, I need to take a different approach. I want to be listening more and taking people's stories in and just let people decide and kind of be a little more open-minded about things. So I patched things up with Ashton and I just invited him on the show. Let's talk it out. Let's do this. And I had a wonderful conversation with him, and he makes his case, and that's, let people decide. And I appreciate his perseverance and his passion about this. I'm undecided personally, just because I don't understand science very well. So a lot of the stuff is over my head, what he's claiming to have happened. But regardless, it's like anytime, this tries to get dismissed, something odd comes up about it again, like this, like just little things. Now, doesn't mean anything, probably not. Well, let's be real, but you never know, right? At the end of the day, and we're in the you never know business. You know what I mean? That's the kind of business we're in, covering UFOs. PhDs,
yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
That's my
you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just odd, and like you said, it is cool. That's cool. They responded. Is it weird that they responded to you so quickly about the mistake of sending this to you? Do you find that really weird?
I mean, I've worked with some people in that office and quite a few different agencies for years.
So they know you.
So I mean, there's a professional courtesy as well, that I'm not just writing them every single day with silly questions, but rather like, hey, saw this, is this a change of policy or whatever? Because I really was interested in that privacy.
That would be a weird change of policy, wouldn't? Like, hey, we're going to start physically mailing out these. I mean, that sounds like way
that's what they did
work.
for years. Is
really?
mail? Yeah.
I guess before email, right?
Yeah. But keep in mind, I'm old and have done this for a long time now. But when I first started, most agencies didn't even accept FOIA requests via email. And you would have to physically mail it in, with postage stamps and all. And, but for a teenager back then, it was it racked up, because I was a big filer of just every agency out there. I was
anything
filing.
You could do.
So stamps on everything. It's like $20 again, like that was awful. But that was how I started. As things passed and got amended, then most agencies accept them via email. But even the CIA for years wouldn't accept anything digitally. You'd still have to fax. So it's just very archaic, the way that they do everything. But the speed in which they responded, now I again just kind of know some of the main people in the office, and it was a straightforward question like, hey, what's this? Is this a change in policy? Or I even thought it may have been a mistake, because I've seen that as well. And, mistakes happen. There's been FOIA cases over the years, that things that showed up in my email box or my physical mailbox that shouldn't have, that were mistakes. They should have been redacted. And, I'm not into the business of blasting out any sensitive information.
Sure.
And it wasn't anything earth changing at all. Like a lot of times you see
Just innocuous.
Either the mistakes or you're like, well, that's a mistake, really? Would have never even noticed. But on top of that, like sometimes you'll get through the mandatory declassification review process, a document will come out and be redacted in certain areas. After a certain amount of time, you can request a re-review. That's an MDR. So a lot of times you'll get the MDR filed, you get the documents back, and some of those redactions are lifted. And you go, yeah, that's a win. You know, that's gold. So you read in like, okay, what was redacted before? And you're like, what the hell was that redacted for? Like, that really taught me nothing. There's nothing sensitive here. Why was it redacted? So sometimes you read that kind of stuff. It's like, why was it classified secret for 40 years? You know, why was it top secret for 35 years? That doesn't make sense. But that's just the reality of it. So yeah, there's always something new to learn with these agencies. And that's why when I saw that cover sheet, I'm like, all right, I got to ask what's going on here.
Definitely adds to the intrigue, right?
Intrigue,
for sure.
Had to be that.
Well, look, let's end on this last thing here and get out. You know, I know you got a busy day ahead. So look, real quick, I just saw this. I think this is a good way to go out. I saw your tweet and what was said. So I tell you what, let me play the clip and then I'll just have you respond real quick here. Does this work? Oh, it does. Does that work? Yeah, it does. I'm learning StreamYard, y'all. Hang on. Okay, here we go.
Obviously, one of those things to come.
Nope. Back it up. Boom.
Well, I think that it is very conspicuous that John Greenewald knew where to get the FOIA designation specifically to get signal messages. For one, that's like, okay, that's an ingenious level of FOIA. Now, he is a genius, don't get me wrong, but I think someone might have tipped their hat, to how he could get it in order to document that. So I think that, Sean Kilpatrick obviously wanted those things to come out, which is fine. I mean, we want to have transparency. I think transparency is good. Well, I think that it is very conspicuous.
Yeah. What do you?
Well, transparency must not be good because it became, I wrote it down, conspicuous that I specifically targeted, quote, to get the signal messages. All of that is untrue. And why I tweeted the response I did was first, shout out to Grant Levac, one of my favorite people out there. And Grant had posted it and essentially said there was nothing conspicuous about that. And this is a testament to Grant. He pays attention and he listens and he wants to learn about the processes and he implements that into his own strategy. He's made some amazing discoveries. He's a great researcher. And I'm not just trying to toot his horn, but my entire point here is that the woman here who's speaking on a podcast and talking about me is obviously painting a picture here that it was a conspiracy of some kind, that I was fed this information. She said that somebody tipped their hat to me in order to get this. Now, here's the reality of it. And I had already blasted this out publicly last year when I filed the request. And it was all about listening to David Grush and listening to Sean Kirkpatrick. And that was the motivation for why I filed the request. Now, there's nothing conspicuous about that. That's what I've done for 27 plus years. You listen when people talk, you look for those tidbits and you act on it. But when she said that I specifically targeted signal messages, all of that is completely inaccurate and wrong. And I think that that's what frustrates me the most, is that people have concocted these conspiracy theories about me and working for the government and people get these tips. No, it's not that easy, sadly. I mean, I wish I had tips. It'd be great. Because if you really want transparency, meaning the lady who just said that, then great. Those tips should be welcomed by all, right? I mean, that shouldn't be a bad thing. Sadly, I don't get a whole lot of tips like that. This was a broad net, what I call a wide net FOIA, that essentially was looking for all forms of communications between, David Grush /Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick /Arrow and David Grush and his representatives to see what came up about this meeting, because it was essentially a he said argument. David Grush versus Sean Kirkpatrick, that David Grush went on News Nation on Halloween night last year and said that Kirkpatrick was lying. So I used what those two gentlemen were saying as essentially the root of the FOIA request. Never targeted signal messages, but I think a lot of people then created this conspiracy theory that I've shown like the letters. I've shown the original request verbatim. I've shown the response letters. Anybody can verify it. So it just frustrates me to see these conspiracies out there that form, because I think it's easier for people to think that there's something nefarious because they don't like the result. So that result had to be rooted to something conspicuous, nefarious. Yes, I appreciated her compliment intertwined in there, but let's be real here. She was obviously framing this as that I had somebody that was feeding me this, like, you have to go after these signal messages. And no, quite the contrary. I was surprised they were there, but dug into it myself on if signal messages were actually FOIA-able. That's one of those made up words. If it was FOIA-able, and it number one absolutely is, and it's not against DoD policy to use signal as long as you fit into a certain set of requirements. So yeah, there was actually nothing nefarious about the FOIA request or signal at all. And to Christopher Mellon's credit, even said that he preferred the transparency and, you know, was surprised, as I was myself. Christopher Mellon said he was surprised, but was glad they were out. So yeah, it's a shame that people fall back to conspiracies rather than, you know, just listen.
And you know who that is that said that? Do you know her name?
To be honest with you, I don't.
Her name is Courtney. I can't remember her last name. She is a podcaster who broke the Jason Sands and whistleblower story essentially as well. Has been working with Jason Sands, that whistleblower.
I didn't realize she was the one that broke the story. I know the name Jason Sands, but
she was working with him and this other guy named Steve, who has not come out publicly, but the day before Jason Sands, I did like a 3-part deep dive, if you want to call it that, about it. And yeah, Courtney was a part of that. And so I found it odd, her comments, to be honest with you. Trust me, she wasn't too happy about me putting out a video saying that Jason Sands killed a blue alien. She was not happy with me about that. But the way I put it, I was like, well, I mean, it's a made up story. How can I be lying about a made up story?
Yeah.
In my opinion, whatever. Anyway, I found it odd for her to say, like, you got tipped off, when that's literally what comes her way is tips to look into this or do that or talk to this guy or whatever. And she did paint you as if you're some sort of double agent. And I see the same thing about you all the time on Twitter. And it's disingenuous, man. So if I were you, I know it's probably hard. You get it a lot, but yeah, I mean, think about it. You're clearly not being paid off. You're clearly not, but people if they they go that way immediately because they have nothing else to stand on. They accuse you of being a disinfo agent, and that will shut everyone up. Yeah. Well, plus it gets likes, right? They know what will get them likes on Twitter. So if I say this, I got to say John's, working for the government. He got something, if you're, you know what I mean? Yeah, it drives me nuts, man, because it's your reputation. You work really hard for what you do. And I think it's just unnecessary, especially from a content creator like Courtney, for her to say stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're not making claims. Does that make sense? You're not out here making claims that you saw a craft or you saw there. You're reporting on what's happening.
But I think that's what's sad. And I don't want to just pick on her. So I'm speaking more general here, but
of course not.
But I think what's kind of a shame is that those conspiracies are so much more palatable than accepting the reality here that this isn't my first rodeo. I filed FOIA requests. So why wouldn't you think that I could just get it? Now, again, she had that nice comment intertwined in there, but clearly she thought, okay, this has to be malicious, because I think the end result, people know what that looks like, and it doesn't make David Grush look good. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. I mean, I'd love to see a response more than he did to News Nation. But I think that because you don't like the result and you can't fight the result, nobody's fought it yet, right? Nobody said this is all made up, fabricated, or hoax. So it's real. There was a clear reach out. So when you juxtapose those documents with David Grush's testimony under oath to Congress, that at that point there was nothing, no reach out there, but it looks like, yeah, they actually were trying to reach out. But then you fast forward to him calling essentially Kirkpatrick a liar to News Nation, that there was nothing. There was clearly reach out and a lot of attempts there. There was a lot of things. So you can't argue that. So then what happens is that his biggest kind of defenders out there have to concoct the conspiracy that this came out maliciously, because that's easier to digest than this makes Grush look bad. So it might make Grush look bad, but let's push that over here, because this is the nefarious work of a secret government that's trying to cover all this up and to squash David Grush and his testimony. And that's easier for some people to accept. And that's a shame. We can't do that. You know, we can't.
I agree.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, selecting what we believe through FOIA. I'm not saying believe everything. I'm not saying doubt everything. But you can't instantly dismiss something you don't like, and you can't instantly believe something that you like, all because it came through FOIA, and it's either unchallengeable if you like it or completely part of the cover-up if you don't. You can't do it that way. So I think people have to kind of take a step back and just start looking at this a little bit more logically, because those conspiracy theories hurt. And one thing I did say to Courtney, and I'm sorry I didn't know her name, I apologize, but one thing that I did say to her on X was, why didn't you just ask? You know, like, even though I've done a video on this, even though I've posted about it, they're timestamped. You can actually go back, see when the day that I filed, why I filed it. Like, I didn't even know any of this would happen. I just like to be transparent. So thankfully I did in this case, because now I can cite that back. So I said, well, despite all of that, why didn't you just ask? And she said that she did reach out to me, but I didn't respond. And again, it was like doubling down on an unfair accusation. I found out she actually did reach out through X, but I don't follow her, so it goes to that other mailbox. I never checked that. But it wasn't even about this. It was in January, and she wanted me to debate the Wilson Davis documents. So again, it's that whole, like, it's easier to paint a different picture publicly and go, well, John, I did reach out to you, you just didn't respond. Well, that's not fair on numerous levels, because it really wasn't true, and it wasn't even connected to this. So again, not trying to pick on her, but I think that we need to get beyond that and just discuss, you know, ask questions, talk to each other. If somebody doesn't like what I say or they don't understand what I said, please just ask the question, because these conspiracies, they hurt. Take me out of the equation, it doesn't matter. But that conspiracy mindset hurts the discussion, because we fall back on that and delusion more than reality. And that's what hurts. And that's what that stigma that so many people don't want anymore. That's why it's still around. It's because of that.
Yeah. People can say, I don't know yet. Like, the information comes out. I don't know why John is a disinformation agent, or vice versa, of saying, you know, David Grush clearly did something wrong here. Why can't you just say, well, that's new information. I still don't know what's going on, because look what happened with Stephen Greenstreet's report with Kirkpatrick. Right? It comes out, well, Kirkpatrick's a little uneasy about things. Things aren't adding up all the way. Lue Elizondo tweets out something about the senior elements of Arrow potentially were trying to prosecute Dave for going public. Right?
Yeah, I was intrigued by that. I don't know.
I'm intrigued by that. I don't know what that means. There's nothing else to back it up, but could that maybe add to why Dave had some that's not in the emails that you uncovered, which I'm happy, dude, bringing all that out again, it helps us build a better story, right? Like, what's going on, clear picture. So with that in mind, maybe, you know, Dave knew that, hey, they're trying to prosecute me, so I'm playing a different way. And those aren't in the emails, right? We don't know that information, because just what you released doesn't mean that's the whole story.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of the story, but not the whole story. And I think as we move forward, I think it's okay to say, I don't know. But attacking you personally,
I'm the first to say it.
I love it. I love I don't know. It's my favorite place to be.
I don't know yet.
You know? Yeah.
And
I love it.
You nailed it. We shouldn't be afraid to say it. Like, I just look, there's so many elements of this puzzle that have not been revealed, and there's so many more we don't know about. And I made this analogy
Just
years
attacking
ago.
you is not the way to go.
Well, it's just attacking people in general, like those types of
For
attacks
sure.
and conspiracies.
For sure.
Those would hurt. But
yeah.
the analogy I made was there was this very cool puzzle, and I had cut out the center of it, and the pieces that you could see on this puzzle, minus the cutout part, you pretty much knew what the puzzle was. And my whole point was, when you get more of the pieces of the puzzle, and I completed it, it was a completely different image. Like, it was one of those, you know, just kind of mind-bending types of photos. But the whole point is, you can't get the edges of a puzzle and think you know what's in the center. And you just can't. And that's what this topic is all about to me, where you think you get a picture, you think you have some kind of clear representation of what really is going on, and then you realize that's just a piece to an even bigger puzzle, right? That's what you thought was the whole puzzle is now just a piece, and it's much, much bigger. And that's what I think we all have to get to, is that we don't have all the answers. We can't have definitive conclusions because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. And I think a lot of people, they don't want that "I don't know" phrase floating out there in their vocabulary, because they want to believe that they know everything, and that if somebody goes against it, whether it be me or anybody else, they need to be chastised for it, and they need to be lynched because they're going against what we believe. And we just have to get away from that, you know. And that goes to the root of these concocted conspiracy theories, again, not only against myself but others. Mick West is a perfect example. I think Mick is a very valuable contribution to this discussion. I really do. I don't agree with him on everything at all. We've bantered back and forth on social media quite a few times, but my point being is that I welcome him with open arms in the conversation, because we need somebody like him. You know, we need all these different types of players to help with this puzzle. But conspiracies, baseless accusations, we don't need that.
No, we already have enough mystery. We're already in the dark with a blindfold on. We're going to add more, right? Like, now you're going to hit my knees out. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm with you. Like, there's no need for it. I'm glad you responded the way you did. I think sometimes it is important to stand up to it a little bit here and there, ignore 99% of it. And every once in a while you do got to say something. Cause you know, I agree with everything you said, man. Look, this was, you know, we talked a lot longer than you had originally agreed to talk to me too. So
talking to you.
I'm sorry we went long.
Time, so.
Yeah, me neither. I'm the same. Trust me. I could have taken this 3 hours. I had a lot more to say, but people want to hear from you, man. So look, this was great having you on. Thank you for giving us more insight into, you know, the stuff with Lue Elizondo and the emails and just everything you're doing with this. You know, we really do appreciate adding a little more, you know, crack a light in here so we can maybe start to see a little bit of things and more pieces to this puzzle to help us get closer to what exactly we're looking at, right? So again, just thank you for taking the time, man, and thank you for coming on Vetted and pushing this. Of course, people can go to your website, Twitter, your YouTube. I'm going to have all the links in the description there. Is there anything specific you want people to go to right away, or I don't know?
TheBlackVault.com is kind of your roadmap to everything that you would want. So yeah, TheBlackVault.com is the way to go. And then at the top, there's all the social media icons. YouTube is obviously for the visual content, but X is where I'm most active, just with story posting. A lot of time I'll blast things out there, just kind of quick tidbits that sometimes the other social media networks don't get. So if you use X, that's where I'm most active, but also on Facebook and so on.
Because all the topics we discussed today, you made videos about. Well, the James Lukatsky and the Lue Elizondo ATIP thing, right? You made that video yesterday, so all that's out there. Please, people, go check that out. He dives deeper into. You're going to get way more info. The MH370. I don't think you made a video on that, did you? But there is an article.
No, that was just one of those examples of a tweet that was. I was literally in my car picking up my son, and had a couple extra minutes, so I started going through mail, and then I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So sometimes I'll do that with documents and stuff and just kind of like blast out a photo. And yeah, that was kind of the genesis of that tweet, and then ended up talking to the DOD and it sounded like a mistake, but regardless, it was still cool to blast out.
No, for sure. Okay, well, cool. It sounds like everyone can get a hold of you. Again, thank you again, John, for coming on Vetted, and can't wait for next time.
My pleasure. Yeah, anytime. Feel free to give me a call anytime.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, dude. Boom. Great.